The pain medication was wearing off when my phone rang. I was 3 days post-surgery, lying in bed with 27 staples across my abdomen, each one tugging like tiny fishhooks whenever I moved. I reached for the phone, the movement sending a wave of nausea through my body. Hello? My voice was weak, barely audible. Zelda, this is Winifred from HR. No greeting, no asking how I was recovering, just straight to business with a voice devoid of any warmth. Yes, hi. I adjusted my position slightly, wincing. I'm calling to inform you that your position has been eliminated, effective immediately. The words hung in the air, while my brain tried to process them through the haze of medication. 4 years as the network security specialist for the company, and this is what I got, a cold call while I was recovering from major surgery. I'm sorry, what? I'm on approved medical leave. My heartbeat quickened, pulling uncomfortably at my surgical site. The decision is final. Your severance details will follow by mail. Your health coverage will continue until the end of the month. But that's all. Goodbye, Zelda. The line went dead, just like that. I stared at the phone in my hand, my brain struggling to catch up with what had just happened. 4 years. 4 years of skipped weekends, missed family gatherings, and prioritizing work emergencies over my own life. Gone in a 15-second phone call. I didn't cry, not immediately. Instead, I felt something inside me go very quiet and very still. 8 weeks earlier, I had stood before the executive team in their glass-walled meeting room. I'd prepared a comprehensive presentation about critical vulnerabilities in our network infrastructure. I'd stayed up 3 nights in a row building detailed slides and solutions. Our system has several significant security gaps that need immediate attention, I had explained, showing evidence of potential weak points. I'd been thorough, professional. Gavin, the CFO, hadn't even looked up from his tablet. Not in this quarter's budget, he'd said, dismissing years of my expertise with a wave of his hand. Lorna, the CEO, had given me that practiced smile that never reached her eyes. We'll consider it for next year's planning. I'd pushed back. These vulnerabilities represent serious risk. If we don't address them now, that will be all, Zelda. Lorna had cut me off. We appreciate your diligence. Now I lay in bed, my surgery incision throbbing in time with my pulse, suddenly unemployed by the very people who had ignored my warnings. Out of habit, or perhaps spite, I reached for my laptop. The movement sent shooting pain across my abdomen, but I gritted my teeth and pulled it onto my lap anyway. I logged into the company system, fully expecting to be blocked. The login succeeded. My admin access remained completely active. The realization settled over me slowly. They'd fired me, but forgotten to revoke my system privileges. Before we continue, I want to thank you for listening to my story. If you're enjoying it so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories like mine. Your support means everything, and I promise the journey ahead is worth your time. Now, let me tell you what happened next. My name is Zelda Ivory, and until 3 days ago, I was the senior network security specialist at a fast-growing tech company. I'm 34, perpetually single because of my dedication to my job, and according to my mother, too smart for my own good. I live in a modest apartment with my rescue cat, Pixel, who's currently the only witness to my career implosion. I've always been the person who sees patterns others miss. As a child, I could spot the weakness in any system, from the flaw in my elementary school's attendance process that let kids skip class undetected, to the gap in my parents' rule enforcement that gave me an extra hour of reading time every night. This talent followed me into adulthood and my career in network security. When I joined the company 4 years ago, their digital infrastructure was a mess, a patchwork of legacy systems and newer technologies held together with the digital equivalent of duct tape and hope. I spent my first year rebuilding it from the ground up, often working until 3 a.m. I knew every server, every access point, every potential vulnerability. The network became an extension of myself. I could feel when something was wrong, almost like a sixth sense. My dedication earned me quick promotions and praise. At first, Zelda is a rare talent, they'd say in my performance reviews. But over time, as the system stabilized and the initial emergency patches were complete, the executives began to take my work for granted. 2 years in, Gavin brought in his nephew Trey as the new VP of Technology, a man whose qualifications seemed limited to an undergraduate degree in business and the right last name. Trey knew nothing about network security, but spoke with the unfounded confidence of someone who had never been challenged. We need to streamline our security protocols, he announced in his first meeting, without understanding what any of our protocols actually did. I tried to educate him. I prepared documents, diagrams, even simplified analogies about why certain measures were essential. But Trey wasn't interested in learning from someone he considered beneath him in the corporate hierarchy. The situation worsened when I developed severe abdominal pain earlier this year. I ignored it at first. There was too much work to do. Too many meetings where I needed to defend our security infrastructure from Trey's cost-cutting measures. By the time I finally saw a doctor, what had started as a manageable condition had become serious enough to require surgery. I filed for medical leave, meticulously documented all my systems, and created detailed guides for whoever would cover my responsibilities. The night before my surgery, I was still answering work emails from my hospital bed. That's the kind of employee I was. And now, 3 days post-operation, I lay in my bed staring at my computer screen, still logged into a system I supposedly no longer had the right to access. That night, pain and fever blurred my thoughts. Images flashed through my mind. Working through holidays while executives collected year-end bonuses. Trey presenting my security protocol during the board meeting, as if it were his creation. My sister telling me at Christmas that I looked exhausted and worked too hard for people who didn't value me. Morning brought a text from Kit, my only real friend at the company. Just heard what happened. Everyone's stunned. You okay? As okay as someone can be who was fired while recovering from surgery? I replied. How's the atmosphere there? Uncomfortable. Trey told the team they'd been planning to restructure your role anyway. Called you unnecessary overhead. Said anyone could do your job. I read those words 3 times. Unnecessary overhead. Anyone could do your job. Something hardened inside me. The pain medication was wearing off, but I didn't reach for the bottle. Instead, I opened my laptop again and stared at the blinking cursor. My mind suddenly crystalline in its clarity. I navigated through the network architecture I'd built and maintained for years. With methodical precision, I began exploring. Not to destroy, I'm not that person, but to understand what had really happened. In Lorna's private email folder, I found the truth. An exchange from 2 weeks ago, while I was preparing for surgery. Zelda's medical leave gives us the perfect opportunity to eliminate her position, Lorna had written to Gavin and Trey. She's become too vocal about security investments we can't afford right now if we want to hit our targets for investors. Gavin's response, agreed. Better to cut her now than deal with more of her catastrophic predictions. Trey's team can absorb her functions. And Trey, perfect timing. She was becoming an obstacle to my department's vision anyway. I sat back, the pain in my abdomen nothing compared to the burning in my chest. 4 years of loyalty, erased because I had the audacity to do my job well and speak the truth about what the company needed. I looked around my bedroom, at the Get Well flowers from my sister, at Pixel curled at my feet, at the pill bottles lined up on my nightstand. I thought about the stack of medical bills that would soon arrive, and about my now uncertain health insurance status. Then I looked back at my computer screen, at the complete access I still had to every corner of the system I'd built. What are you thinking? I whispered to myself, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I'd always played by the rules, always been the responsible one, the ethical professional. But they hadn't played by the rules, had they? I took a deep breath and began to type. My fingers moved with purpose as I began a methodical exploration of the network I'd built. I wasn't just browsing aimlessly. I was mapping possibilities. 4 years of creating secure pathways through the digital landscape had given me an intimate understanding of how information flowed through the company. In Trey's personal drive, I found presentation decks where he'd removed my name from security protocols I'd designed. In meeting minutes, I discovered how he'd downplayed security concerns I'd raised, calling them Zelda's typical overreactions after I'd left the room. The further I dug, the more I uncovered. The board had been told my position was being eliminated as part of a strategic restructuring. No mention of my medical leave or my repeated warnings about system vulnerabilities. Pixel, I said to my cat, who had settled beside my laptop. They think network security is just an expense, not an investment. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of betrayal pressing against my chest. When I opened them again, a new email notification had appeared in the corner of my screen. It was from Lorna to the executive team. Following Zelda's departure, Trey will be overseeing network security integration into his department. We're confident this restructuring will allow for more efficient operations while maintaining adequate protection. Board presentation on cost savings next Tuesday. Adequate protection. The phrase made my blood simmer. They had no idea what adequate even looked like in network security terms. My phone buzzed with a text from Kit. Meeting just ended. Trey's been put in charge of your security protocols. He couldn't even remember the name of our authentication system. Another buzz. He called it that login thing Zelda was so obsessed with. This is going to be a disaster. I set my phone down and stared at the ceiling. The pain medication was wearing off completely now, leaving me with a clear head and a sharper sense of injustice. I carefully swung my legs over the side of the bed and made my way to the kitchen for water, each step a reminder of my recent surgery. As I leaned against the counter, sipping water and looking out at the city lights, a plan began to take shape in my mind. Not a plan to destroy or corrupt. I wasn't interested in committing crimes, but something more elegant, something that would use their own actions against them. I returned to bed with a notepad, jotting down ideas until exhaustion took over. Morning brought a call from my sister, Dasha. "Hey, how are you feeling?" Her voice was gentle, concerned. "Like I've been gutted twice, once by surgeons and once by my employer. I still can't believe they fired you while you were recovering. That's low, even for corporate America." "Apparently, I'm unnecessary overhead," I said, the words still bitter on my tongue. "You should sue them for wrongful termination," Dasha said. She'd always been the fighter in the family. Maybe, but litigation wasn't where my mind was going. "How's Mom?" "Mom, furious on your behalf. She wants to come stay with you next week. Tell her I'm okay. I need space to figure things out." After the call, I pulled my laptop closer and logged in once more. I spent the next few hours carefully examining the network structure, identifying specific pathways and access points. I created a detailed map of information flow, who could see what, which barriers existed between departments, how data was compartmentalized. The company operated on a strict need-to-know basis. Marketing couldn't see finance data. Human resources couldn't access customer information. Lower-level employees couldn't view executive communications. These barriers weren't just about security. They were about power. Information control was how the executive team maintained their authority. As I worked, a text arrived from Kit. "Just overheard Trey telling Lorna that your security concerns were mostly theatrical and that he's found several inefficiencies in your system that he's going to fix. He has no idea what he's talking about." My jaw clenched. 4 years of meticulous work dismissed as theatrical by someone who couldn't tell a firewall from a fire drill. That afternoon, my sister arrived with groceries and a sympathetic ear. As she unpacked fresh produce and prepared soup, I sat at my kitchen counter, carefully choosing my words. "Dasha, if you knew someone was about to make a terrible mistake that would hurt a lot of people, but they refused to listen to warnings, what would you do?" She paused, knife hovering over a carrot. "This is about your company, isn't it?" I nodded. "I'd document everything," she said, resuming her chopping. "Make sure I had proof that I tried to warn them. And if you already had that documentation, then I'd walk away. Not your circus, not your monkeys anymore." She pointed the knife at me. "Unless you're thinking about something that could get you in trouble." "No," I said, the lie feeling strange on my tongue, just processing what happened. That night, after Dasha left, I returned to my laptop. The company's system was like a house I had built. I knew every room, every closet, every hidden passage, and now I was going to quietly rearrange the furniture before I locked the door behind me for good. I began by exploring the system for any traces of my login activity. I needed to ensure that what I was about to do wouldn't leave footprints leading back to me. I carefully routed my connection through several layers of obscurity, not to hide that I had logged in, but to mask exactly what I was doing once inside. Over the next 3 days, between naps and pain medication, I crafted something subtle, a script that would work gradually, almost imperceptibly at first. I named it Transparency Protocol. Its purpose wasn't destruction but revelation. As I worked, I received updates from Kit about the office. Trey had begun improvements to the security system, starting by simplifying the password requirements I'd implemented, effectively reducing security in the name of convenience. He disabled the 2-factor authentication for executives because Gavin complained it was too cumbersome. Kit texted, said high-level staff shouldn't be bothered with security measures, meant for regular employees. I laughed despite the pain it caused in my abdomen. They were making it almost too easy. On the 6th day after my firing, I finalized my script. It was elegant in its simplicity, designed not to force open doors, but to simply prevent them from automatically closing. Information barriers would begin to dissolve, gradually at first, then more rapidly. I hesitated, cursor hovering over the execute command. What I was about to do wasn't technically illegal. I wasn't stealing data or damaging systems, but it certainly violated professional ethics. Once set in motion, I wouldn't be able to stop it. My phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from the HR department, a form letter confirming my termination and outlining my meager severance package. At the bottom was a note: company property must be returned within 14 days of termination. I thought of my laptop, the one I'd been using to access their system all week. They hadn't even remembered to ask for it back or disable my access. That's how little they thought of me and my role. I pressed enter. The script uploaded. "What did you just do?" Pixel seemed to ask, jumping onto the bed and staring at me with unblinking eyes. "I just made sure everyone gets the information they deserve," I told him, scratching behind his ears. The next morning, I woke to a series of increasingly panicked texts from Kit. "Something weird is happening with the system. Marketing team somehow got access to the executive compensation spreadsheet. Trey is freaking out. He keeps saying the system must have glitched because of your poor infrastructure design." I smiled for the first time since the surgery. By the afternoon, the texts had grown more urgent. Customer service can now see all the internal emails about how we're supposed to deny warranty claims. Sales team just discovered they've been getting 30% less commission than they were promised. Trey called an emergency meeting. He has no idea what's happening or how to stop it. I set my phone aside and closed my eyes. The script was working exactly as designed. Not destroying anything, just removing the artificial barriers that kept certain information confined to certain eyes. That evening, my mother called. "Zelda, have you seen the news? Your company's stock dropped 12% today. There are rumors about internal data issues. I hadn't expected things to move quite this quickly." "Really? That's interesting." "I know that tone," my mother said. "What did you do?" "Nothing illegal," I answered honestly. "I'm just resting and recovering, like the doctor ordered." 2 days later, Kit called rather than texted. Her voice was a mixture of awe and anxiety. "The office is in complete chaos," she said. "Everyone can see everything now. All the executives' emails, all the financial projections, all the performance reviews, everything. People are finding out they're paid less than colleagues with less experience. Customers are discovering how the company really talks about them. Investors are learning about risks that weren't disclosed." "Sounds messy," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Trey is pointing fingers at everyone. He called you a disgruntled former employee in a company-wide email, suggesting you somehow sabotaged the system. But then someone from IT pointed out that if you could do that after being fired, it only proves how right you were about our security vulnerabilities." I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. "The weirdest thing is," Kit continued, "nothing is actually broken. All our systems work fine. Information just isn't staying where it's supposed to. It's like the walls became glass overnight. Everyone can see everything. Transparency can be uncomfortable," I said. "Zelda," Kit's voice lowered. "Did you do this?" I paused. Kit was my friend, but she was still a company employee. Let's just say, I find it ironic that they're finally experiencing the consequences of ignoring security concerns. After we hung up, I checked the company's stock price, down another 14%. Local business news had picked up the story, reporting on internal data management issues at the company. For the first time since my surgery, I got dressed in real clothes and took a short walk around my neighborhood. The fresh air felt good, and the exercise helped clear my mind. As I walked, I thought about what might be unfolding at my former workplace. By now, Trey would be in full panic mode. The board would be demanding answers. Lorna and Gavin would be trying to contain the damage. Everyone would be looking for someone to blame, and I was just a fired employee, recovering from surgery, who had nothing to do with their current predicament. At least, nothing they could prove. When I returned home, there was a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I played it on speaker as I made tea. "Zelda, this is Lorna." The CEO's voice sounded strained, lacking its usual confidence. "We seem to be experiencing some technical difficulties with our network. Given your expertise, we'd like to bring you in as a consultant to help resolve these issues. Please call me back as soon as possible. I stared at my phone, a slow smile spreading across my face. They fired me because I warned them about security vulnerabilities, and now they wanted me back to fix those same vulnerabilities. The irony was almost too perfect. I didn't call back. 3 days later, Lorna called again. This time, I answered. "Zelda," she said, relief evident in her voice. "Thank you for picking up. We need your help." I let the silence stretch uncomfortably before responding. "I'm still recovering from surgery, Lorna. The surgery I was going through when you eliminated my position. I understand you must feel disappointed about that decision." Her voice was carefully measured. "But we're willing to offer you a generous consulting fee to help us resolve our current technical issues." "What kind of issues?" Lorna hesitated. "There seems to be some kind of information containment problem. Departmental firewalls are failing. Confidential information is becoming visible throughout the organization." "That sounds serious," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" The silence on the other end was delicious. "This isn't a joke, Zelda. The company is in crisis. Our stock has dropped 26% in 3 days. Clients are threatening to leave. The board is demanding answers." I adjusted my position on the couch, wincing slightly at the pull of my healing incision. "What does Trey think, since he's now in charge of network security?" Another pause. "Trey has been unable to identify the source of the problem." "I see." I let the moment stretch. "My medical leave was supposed to be 6 weeks, Lorna. I'm barely 2 weeks in. My doctor doesn't want me working yet. We're desperate, Zelda. Name your price." I thought about it. Going back now would mean I could witness the chaos firsthand, but it would also put me at the scene of the crime, so to speak. "I'm sorry, Lorna. I need to focus on my recovery." I hung up before she could respond. Kit called me that evening. Her voice hushed as if she was hiding in a supply closet. "It's getting worse. The transparency is spreading faster. This morning, everyone could see the list of employees scheduled for termination next quarter. People are updating their resumes at their desks. No one's even pretending to work." "What about Trey?" I asked. "He brought in some external IT consultants, but they can't figure it out either. They keep saying our network architecture is too complex and unconventional." I smiled. I had built that architecture to be intuitive for those who understood its principles, but labyrinthine to outsiders. "But here's the real bombshell," Kit continued. "This afternoon, all the emails between Lorna, Gavin, and Trey about firing you during your medical leave became visible to the entire HR department. One of the HR managers, Autumn, was horrified. She's consulting with the legal team about whether the company violated labor laws. This was an unexpected development, one that might actually benefit me in ways I hadn't anticipated. The executive team is fracturing," Kit added. "Gavin is blaming Trey for not maintaining proper security. Trey is blaming you for setting booby traps in the system. Lorna is blaming both of them for not handling the transition properly." "And what's the general feeling among the staff?" I asked. "Honestly, a lot of people are quietly cheering. All these secrets that management kept, unfair pay disparities, planned layoffs, executive bonuses while denying raises to workers. It's all coming out. It feels like justice, in a weird way." After we hung up, I lay back on my couch, staring at the ceiling. My plan had been to expose the hypocrisy and poor management of the executive team, but I hadn't fully considered how it might affect my colleagues. The idea that many of them saw this as justice was surprisingly satisfying. The next day brought news coverage. A local business reporter had picked up the story. "Tech firm faces internal crisis as confidential information flows freely through company channels." Sources inside the company report that salary information, executive communications, and strategic plans are now visible to employees at all levels, creating what one insider described as a total collapse of information hierarchy. The company's stock has plummeted amid concerns about data security and management stability. By the end of the week, the situation had escalated further. Kit reported that clients were pulling their contracts after discovering internal emails discussing quality shortcuts. 2 senior managers had resigned. The board had called an emergency meeting, and still, nobody could figure out how to stop the transparency protocol from continuing its work. I was healing well, gradually reducing my pain medication and taking longer walks each day. As my physical strength returned, so did my clarity about what I had done and what might come next. Part of me worried about potential consequences if they ever traced the script back to me, but a larger part felt a sense of vindication I couldn't deny. 9 days after I'd implemented the protocol, my doorbell rang. When I checked through the peephole, I was surprised to see Autumn from HR standing there, clutching a portfolio. I opened the door cautiously. Autumn, this is unexpected. She looked uncomfortable. May I come in? This isn't an official visit. I hesitated, then stepped aside to let her enter. Nice place, she said, glancing around my apartment. How are you recovering? Better every day, I replied, but I doubt you came to check on my health. Autumn sat on the edge of my armchair, her posture rigid. I've been reviewing your termination, Zelda. The timing, during approved medical leave, violates several labor regulations. The company is exposed to significant liability. I see. I kept my expression neutral. I brought something you should see. She opened her portfolio and handed me a document. This is the severance agreement they want to offer you. 5 months salary, continued health benefits for 6 months, and a non-disclosure agreement. I scanned the document. The NDA was comprehensive, preventing me from discussing not just the terms of my separation, but any operational insights I might have about the company. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Autumn looked down at her hands. Because it's wrong, what they did to you, and because, she hesitated, because I've seen the emails, Zelda, about how they ignored your security warnings, about how they planned your termination during your surgery recovery, about how Trey claimed he could easily replace your expertise. She looked up, meeting my eyes. I can't prove it, but I think what's happening now, all this information, suddenly flowing freely, it's related to those ignored warnings, isn't it? I kept my face carefully blank. I'm just focusing on healing, Autumn. She nodded slowly. The company is imploding. The transparency is showing everyone who the executives really are, what they really think. It's like the system itself is exposing years of lies. Systems tend to seek equilibrium, I said. Information wants to be free. Autumn stood, straightening her skirt. I'll leave this with you. For what it's worth, I advised against your termination. I was overruled. After she left, I read through the severance agreement more carefully. They were offering me money to stay quiet and go away, to let them continue as if they'd done nothing wrong. I set the document aside, unpaid medical bills stacked next to it, on my coffee table. That evening, my phone rang again. This time, it was Gavin, the CFO. Zelda, he said without preamble. We need to talk about what you did. My heart rate spiked, but I kept my voice steady. What I did? I've been recovering from surgery, Gavin. Don't play games, he snapped. Whatever you did to our network, you need to undo it now. The board is talking about involving law enforcement. That sounds serious, I said, but I'm not sure what you think I could have done from my sickbed. You still had system access, he said. We know you logged in after your termination. A chill ran through me. They had traced that much, at least. I logged in to collect personal files and bookmarks. I said, the lie coming easily. I didn't realize my access hadn't been revoked yet. That seems like a security vulnerability. Exactly the kind I'd been warning about for months. Gavin's frustrated exhale was audible. Listen carefully. If you cooperate and help us fix this mess, we can make a deal. The severance package Autumn showed you, we can double it. That's generous, I said. But I'm still on doctor-ordered rest, and I'm not sure what you expect me to fix, since I don't know what's wrong. Bullshit, Gavin hissed. You built the system. You know exactly what's happening. Maybe the system is just working as it should, I suggested. Maybe information is finally flowing to the people who need it. People don't need to know everything. Organizations function on controlled information flow. Is that why you controlled the information that my job was being eliminated while I was in surgery? I asked, my tone still pleasant. Silence. I'll think about your offer, Gavin. In the meantime, maybe check with Trey. He said anyone could do my job, remember? I hung up and immediately turned off my phone, my hands shaking slightly. They suspected me, but couldn't prove anything. Yet, the next morning, Kit called me on my landline, her voice tense. They're bringing in forensic IT specialists, she said without greeting. Serious people, government contractor types. They're going to do a complete system analysis. My stomach tightened. When? They start tomorrow. Zelda, if you did something, they might find it. I had been careful, but I wasn't infallible. A sophisticated enough investigation might uncover traces of my work. Thanks for the warning, I said. After we hung up, I paced my apartment, my surgical incision protesting the sudden activity. I hadn't expected them to bring in that level of expertise. My transparency protocol was subtle, but it wasn't designed to withstand professional forensic analysis. For the first time since I'd started this, I felt real fear. If they could prove I deliberately altered the system after being terminated, I could face serious consequences: legal action, financial ruin, possibly even criminal charges. I sat down at my laptop and logged into the company system one last time. My access still worked. Unbelievable that they hadn't disabled it yet, even knowing I'd logged in after being fired. I had a choice to make. I could try to cover my tracks by implementing additional code to hide my activities. I could attempt to remove the transparency protocol entirely, though at this point it had spread too thoroughly through the system to be easily extracted. Or I could do something else entirely, something they wouldn't expect. As I considered my options, a new email appeared in the company-wide announcements folder. It was from the board of directors to all staff. Due to ongoing system integrity issues and resulting market instability, the board has placed CEO Lorna Wells, CFO Gavin Porter, and VP of Technology Trey Porter on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Effective immediately, an interim management team will be implemented. All employees are expected to cooperate fully with the forensic IT team arriving tomorrow. I stared at the screen, the implications sinking in. The board had acted before the forensic team even started their investigation. They'd removed the entire executive leadership team. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? I answered cautiously. Zelda Ivory. This is Marcus Webb, chairperson of the board of directors. My breath caught. This was it. They had traced everything back to me. And now, I was going to face the consequences. Yes, I managed to say. This is Zelda. Miss Ivory, he said, his tone unreadable. We need to talk about the future of the company. I sat frozen, my fingers gripping the phone tightly. The board chairperson's words hung in the air between us. The future of the company? I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. Yes, Marcus said. I'll be direct. Our system is in chaos. Information barriers have collapsed completely. Yesterday, our entire client database received internal emails discussing cost-cutting measures that affected product quality. Our stock has dropped 34% in 10 days. We're facing potential shareholder lawsuits. I remained silent, waiting. The board has reviewed the situation thoroughly, he continued. We've seen the emails from Lorna, Gavin, and Trey regarding your termination. We've seen your previous security warnings that were ignored. The timing of your dismissal during medical leave was, he paused, highly problematic from both an ethical and legal standpoint. My heart was pounding so hard I wondered if he could hear it through the phone. What exactly do you want from me, Mr. Webb? I asked. 2 things. First, your insight into what's happening with our network. Second, if possible, your help in resolving it. I took a deep breath. That's assuming I know anything about the current situation. Miss Ivory, let's be candid. Our preliminary investigation shows that you logged into the system several times after your termination. While we can't yet prove what actions you took during those sessions, the timing suggests your involvement. I said nothing. But here's what's interesting, Marcus continued. Whatever has happened to our system, it hasn't destroyed data or compromised client information. It's simply redistributed access, made visible what was previously hidden. I shifted on my couch, my surgical incision twinging. That sounds like a transparency issue, not a security breach. Exactly, he said, and I could hear something like reluctant admiration in his voice. It's elegant, actually. The system is functioning perfectly. It's just not maintaining the information barriers the executive team had established. Information wants to be free, I said, echoing what I'd told Autumn. Perhaps, but companies need some level of controlled information flow to function effectively, and some level of transparency to function ethically, I countered. Marcus was quiet for a moment. The board has terminated Lorna, Gavin, and Trey, effective immediately. Their handling of security concerns, their decision to fire you during medical leave, and their response to the current crisis demonstrated profound incompetence. This was unexpected. I had hoped to create enough chaos to expose their poor leadership, but I hadn't anticipated the board would act so decisively. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. "Not sorry at all. Miss Ivory, we'd like to bring you back, not as a consultant, but in a new position, Chief Information Security Officer, reporting directly to the board. Your first task would be to restore appropriate information boundaries within our system." I nearly dropped the phone. "You're offering me a promotion after firing me 2 weeks ago? The previous leadership team fired you. They're gone now." His tone hardened slightly. "Of course, this offer assumes you can help resolve our current transparency issue." I understood the implicit message. They suspected I was behind the system changes, but couldn't prove it. They were offering me a way out and a way up if I could fix what I'd done. "I'm still recovering from surgery," I said. "Doctor's orders. We understand. You can begin working remotely, at your own pace. The compensation package will be substantial, I assure you." "I'll need to see the details in writing," I said, "and I want full authority over security implementation." "Done," Marcus said, too quickly. They were desperate. "One more thing," I added. "I want a public acknowledgement that my previous security concerns were valid and should have been addressed." "That can be arranged. Do we have a deal?" I paused, considering. This was more than revenge. This was vindication on a scale I hadn't imagined. But there was a catch. I would have to undo my own work, or at least appear to try. "I'll need to assess the situation before I can promise any specific results," I said carefully. "The system may have undergone changes that can't be easily reversed." "Understood. Just do what you can. We'll send over the employment contract today." After we hung up, I sat motionless, processing what had just happened. The executives who had fired me were now fired themselves. The board was offering me a C-suite position with increased authority and pay. My warnings had been validated in the most public way possible. I looked down at Pixel, who had jumped into my lap during the call. Well, that was unexpected. My doorbell rang an hour later. A courier delivered a thick envelope containing my new employment contract. The terms were extraordinary. Triple my previous salary, reporting directly to the board, full authority over information security protocols, and a public statement acknowledging the validity of my previous concerns. I called Dasha immediately. "They want me back," I said when she answered, "with a promotion and a massive raise." "What? The same people who fired you while you were in surgery?" "No, those people have been fired themselves. This is coming from the board." Dasha was quiet for a moment. "Zelda, did you do something to their system after they fired you?" I hesitated. "Let's just say their decision to ignore security vulnerabilities had consequences. And now they want you to fix those consequences." She laughed. "That's poetic justice if I've ever heard it." "The thing is," I said, "I'm not sure I should undo everything. Some of that transparency was revealing serious ethical issues, pay disparities, discrimination, executives lying to clients. So what will you do?" "I'm thinking I'll implement a more balanced approach. Some information should be protected for legitimate reasons. But other things, executive compensation relative to worker pay, product quality issues, discrimination incidents, maybe those should remain more visible." "Sounds like you're planning to remake the company culture from the inside," Dasha said. "Someone needs to," I replied. The next day, I signed the contract and began remote work as the new Chief Information Security Officer. The first thing I did was revoke my old admin credentials, the ones I'd been using since being fired, and create new ones with my elevated privileges. Basic security hygiene, something Trey should have done immediately after my termination. Working from my couch with Pixel beside me, I began a thorough investigation of the system issues. I took my time, documenting the extent of the transparency protocol's effects while appearing to search for its source. After 3 days, I prepared a report for the board. I carefully constructed it to suggest that multiple security vulnerabilities, the very ones I had warned about before my surgery, had combined with some innovative network reconfiguration attempts by Trey to create the current situation. The report concluded, "The system's current state of transparency appears to be the result of cascading failures in the information barrier architecture, triggered by unauthorized modifications implemented during my absence. Restoring selective information boundaries will require a careful, gradual approach to avoid further destabilization." This gave me the perfect cover to implement a more nuanced version of the transparency protocol, one that would maintain appropriate confidentiality where truly needed while preserving visibility in areas where secrecy had previously enabled misconduct. The board accepted my assessment and gave me complete authority to proceed as I saw fit. They were desperate for stability, and I was now their best hope. Over the next 2 weeks, as I continued recovering from surgery, I methodically adjusted the system. I restored privacy for legitimate confidential information, client data, intellectual property, personal employee information. But I left intact the transparency around executive decision-making, compensation structures, and performance metrics. Kit texted me regularly with updates from the office. The atmosphere is completely different. Everyone knows where they stand now. People are actually talking openly about problems instead of hiding them. The interim CEO just announced they're implementing the equal pay structure that became visible during the system issue. 3 weeks into my new role, I returned to the office for the first time since my surgery. As I walked through the entrance, I was met with applause from the technical team. Several people stepped forward to welcome me back, including some who had barely acknowledged my existence before. Autumn from HR greeted me with a knowing smile. "Remarkable recovery, both yours and the company's," she said quietly. "Though some things will never go back to being quite as hidden as they were before, will they?" I smiled. Transparency has its benefits. By my 4th week back, the company had stabilized. The stock price had begun to recover as the market responded positively to the leadership changes and new transparency initiatives. The forensic IT team had submitted their final report, which identified multiple security vulnerabilities, but couldn't determine exactly how the information barriers had failed so systematically. The case was closed. My revenge, if anyone had ever suspected it, was complete and unprovable. In my new corner office, a significant upgrade from my previous workspace, I received an email from Marcus and the board. "The public statement acknowledging your previous security warnings and the inappropriate circumstances of your termination will be released tomorrow. We believe this transparency is important for rebuilding trust within the organization. The board commends your professionalism in returning to help the company through this challenging transition." I leaned back in my chair, a sense of satisfaction warming me. The executives who had dismissed my expertise, ignored my warnings, and fired me during medical leave were gone. I had been vindicated, promoted, and given authority to reshape the company's information culture. And best of all, no one could definitively prove I had orchestrated any of it. That evening, as I prepared to leave for the day, Kit stopped by my office. "So," she said, closing the door behind her, "are you ever going to tell me exactly what you did?" I smiled. "I have no idea what you mean." According to the official report, the system experienced cascading failures due to pre-existing vulnerabilities combined with Trey's incompetent modifications. Kit leaned against my desk. "Right. And it just happened to expose every bad decision the executive team ever made while you were recovering at home. Sometimes the universe delivers justice in unexpected ways." She studied my face for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Well, whatever didn't happen, the company's better for it. More honest, more fair. That's what matters in the end," I agreed. 6 months later, I sat in the boardroom, presenting my comprehensive security overhaul plan. The new CEO, a thoughtful, ethical leader selected with input from employees at all levels, nodded approvingly as I outlined my approach. "This balances security with appropriate transparency," she said. "It protects what needs protection while ensuring we can't return to the toxic secrecy that nearly destroyed the company." As I looked around the table at the engaged faces of the leadership team, I felt a deep satisfaction. My surgical scar had healed to a faint line. The company was thriving under new leadership, and I had transformed a moment of profound injustice into an opportunity to create lasting change. That night, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, Pixel purring in my lap. I thought about how differently things might have turned out if Lorna, Gavin, and Trey had simply listened to my security warnings, or at least had the decency not to fire me while I was recovering from surgery. Their arrogance had been their downfall. Their assumption that I was just unnecessary overhead had led them to make the fatal mistake of leaving me with access to the very systems they had paid me to build and protect. In the end, my revenge hadn't been about destroying anything. It had been about revealing the truth, about letting information flow freely to those who deserved to know it. And in doing so, I had not only avenged myself, but had helped create a more transparent, ethical workplace for everyone. Sometimes, justice comes not from tearing something down, but from letting everyone see it clearly for what it truly is. If you've stayed with me through this story, I want to thank you for listening. Life doesn't always give us neat resolutions when we're wronged, but sometimes, if we're smart and patient, we can create our own justice. If you found something valuable in my experience, please hit the like button and subscribe for more stories about navigating the complicated world of corporate ethics and personal vindication. And I'd love to hear in the comments about times when you've faced injustice and how you handled it. Remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't about destruction, it's about transformation.